All right, so Aaron, it is a pleasure, like I said, off record to sit with you. Obviously, it's been a long time since we last spoke, and a lot has happened to you in your career. So I kind of wanted to ask, because when we first spoke, it was just after Megalithic Symphony. Obviously you'd exploded onto the scene. You were doing regular touring in the UK, and we'll get to that as well. Hopefully, see you back in the UK over the coming months. But I wanted to ask you, what have you learned about yourself since the beginning of your career until now? How would you say you've changed and developed? Because you've just started a family. Things have changed a lot for you. Over that period of time, over your career. So, what would you say you've learned about yourself? How would you say you've changed and developed since 2011, Aaron, to where you are now in 2024?
Um, Great question. I would like, well, I had a lot of growing up to do.
Mm.
And since I sort of cracked into what is considered success musically,
Yeah.
um, I think I was taking it all in a certain way that looking back on, um, probably wasn't as mature as I could have been. But it's like finding success at the age of 30, 31, which doesn't seem that old to me now that I'm older, but back then, you got to remember this each year, the goalpost moves a little bit as it pertains to age, I think. And
Mm.
so I had I had stumbled across so many um failures musically leading up to that point. So when it finally started to take off, um, I think that I think I was ready for it, but I didn't know how much more there maturing there was to do. So to answer your question, this is a clumsy way of answering it, but basically, as I look back, I've grown a lot as a person, and there's a lot more growing to do. I want to learn more. I want to read more. I want to spend time on what actually matters and expanding, my mind in a lot of ways, and find different ways to communicate with the listener. Different ways to present art. And I think in the beginning when I first met you, it was such a sigh of relief that it finally worked. And there's no guarantee that it'll ever work, right? But I finally stumbled across success, and I'm going, oh my God, I think I actually made it now,
Mm.
And so there was a period of celebration, and also some weird guilt in some way, like thinking, I don't know, maybe that in some ways I didn't necessarily deserve it or something, because I was only used to putting out singles and putting out other albums that didn't see the light of day. And now all of a sudden I've gone rogue on my own, with a cast of support in various ways. But I don't know. So to answer your question for the third time here, um, I see life a lot more,
Yeah.
clearly, and have a different perspective. And becoming a parent and all that stuff has, changed my life for the better forever. And
Yeah.
if you go back throughout the timeline of your life, or any listener to this, you always think shit. Like when I was in 15, I thought I had reinvented the wheel, right? Of like whatever it was, whether it was, how much I cared about surfing or how much I cared about punk rock music, and then you discover something else. And so if I were to give advice to my older self, it would be to just chill and relax, and it's nothing's as big of a deal as it seems.
Yeah.
And I've studied a lot of personality differences, and I know for my own personality, what seems like a 10 or even 11 for Spinal Tap fans, at the time can end up being more of a 5 or a 6 or even less. So
Yeah.
just chill a little bit and have patience.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And you said there was a time where you didn't feel like you deserve it. Do you feel like you deserve it now? Have you got to the point where, like, because you're chilling out, like, do you feel like
Yeah.
you deserve it now?
Um, I don't think that anyone necessarily deserves it or not, right?
Right.
So I guess that would be the main point is that songs come from outer space a lot of the times, and you don't a lot of the time. You don't really know, where an idea comes from. It just appears. So some of these songs that have got me to where I'm at, I don't feel like I have this technical talent necessarily, or I just feel, I think if I were to really, admit to something that I have that maybe others don't, is I just have a really high degree of openness to all music. So since I'm a fan of everything from 80s pop music to hardcore metal, underground to mainstream, I just love all music. I think maybe that's a huge reason I've been able to incorporate multiple genres and listen to enough stuff that I have a wide pool of influences. So if I were to choose one skill, it'd probably just be that I love music so much.
Yeah. You can tell that. I mean, I when you released the Barbarian to California stuff, I was like, oh my God, this is
Oh yeah.
insane. The vocal, you obviously so distinctly your vocal, but such a heavy thing. And I'll maybe touch on that in a minute. But again, you can tell through your output that diversity. Obviously, there's a couple of tracks on the record, some collaborations, which I want to touch upon. Sort of again showcasing your love for all forms of music. But I do want to ask you, as somebody that came from punk rock, you might want to, put the zoom down when I ask you this question, because different artists, respond differently to this. Do you consider at this point in your career, your legacy as an artist? Does that, as a guy with such a wonderful portfolio of music, of course, your sales, your runs, etc. Do you think about your legacy as an artist or not at all?
I haven't yet, but maybe subliminally, I'm trying to perhaps control the ending of the story, because I have considered this Phantom 5 record to be the last AWOLNATION record. And, maybe I'm being a bit manipulative or overly narcissistic or something, but I don't want to make a bad album. And I don't think I've done that yet, within the world I've created. Of course, there are many people who I'm sure would, not everybody's going to like this stuff. Right. And that's great. But I haven't thought of it the way you stated it, and maybe I should pay more attention to that. But I have been kind of creating an invisible enemy to push myself a little bit more. A lot of the athletes I love, Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, they would create a story, almost like they would make up something to give them motivation. I think a lot of fighters do that too. And I kind of did that with this record. I thought, well, this may be the last AWOLNATION record. I've made 4 plus the covers album, so let's say 4.5, because I don't count that. What am I going to make? 6, 7, 8? Like, what's the last artist? I think a lot of metal bands make a lot of good records, but who's the last artist that made 6 or 7 records that are really good? Radiohead has, even the Beatles have less records than you imagine. Nirvana really only has 4. One's like a B-side record, and some of my favorite artists, they don't really make good stuff after a while. So I don't want to be making half-assed stuff eventually. So the fire's still there. And so I went into it thinking, well, if this is the last record, I would love for it to be really good. And I would love for the last song to be a nice farewell send-off. I haven't decided definitively in any way, but I like the idea of, I'm proud of this record if it is the last one. So that I kind of created that whole story.
Yeah, absolutely. And those tracks, the tracks you've released out into the world so far, the collaborative tracks, I Am Happy is one, of course. You've got Jump Sit Stand March as well, collaborative tracks, but very hopeful. And I was going to touch on, I think it was the Express you did the interview with, where you talked about, potentially it being the last record. These tracks you've released into the world seem very hopeful. Am I right in saying, I mean, you did pretty much just say it, you are in a hopeful space, an excited space at this point in your career as we release this record. Are you,
Yeah.
like, in what ways have you sort of pushed yourself in new ways as an artist and found hope, if that's the right word, for the future?
Yeah, well, I think I find hope in you know, my belief system,
Mm.
my ways of control, like putting effort into what I can actually control, which is what's in front of me, local community, what the band, what's actually in front of me. So if you turn on the news, you think the world's going to end every single day, and remember Y2K? Remember when we
Yeah.
all thought the world was good? So like every day feels like Y2K, right? And everybody's telling us at the same time. So I just go, okay, I'm not listening to any of you anymore, and I never will again. And so I move on with my life in a lot of ways. And the thing is, like, I don't believe that it's the worst time to be alive. I think it's a really good time to be alive, actually. Are there horrible things happening? Of course. Yes. Um, but if you can block out the negativity and control what you can actually control, you'll find that you have more in common with people than you don't. And going on this tour, I found a new passion of I'm starting this whole podcast slash show, whatever we're going to call it, where I'm asking everybody what their favorite song is of all time and why. And so I was just in the airport. I could go in the airport and ask anyone. Well, some people say, get the fuck out of my face with your camera or whatever, but I could ask pretty much anyone, hey, what's your favorite? Can I ask you about music? And most people say, yeah. And they're kind and they'll give me their answer. And I found that's my contribution, is music. So you like, we're talking from different parts of the world right now, but that doesn't matter. Your government is different than mine. You may have some religious belief or spirituality that's different than how I feel, or eat different than I do, or like different movies than I do, but we could always come together and bond about music. And so
Yeah.
it's the common language, it's the common communication. And once you realize the world is flawed, and that's part of life, life is unfair, and no government's going to solve that. No man is going to solve that. No woman's going to solve that. So in the meantime, you may as well look at the glass half full and find something to relate on instead of what we disagree on, because it's easy to disagree, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so music is that thing. And I don't even remember what the question was, so I kind of went on
No, no,
a long-winded deal, but
no, it's cool. I appreciate it because it's interesting you talk about that, because I remember, I've been in rooms and clubs since we met where people have bonded over an AWOLNATION track, and I remember,
cool.
yeah, people, the melodies of, that first record and Into Run, I'm one of those people that, like, I can find myself lifted by melody. I remember when, I think it was, the first time I listened to uh, it was like Jump on My Shoulders or Kill Your Heroes, and the
Right.
melodies of that was when we first met. But then since then there have been numerous tracks that have done that. And my question, like, just going back to what you were saying, is, do you feel happy? And I suppose it ties into the song in a way. Do you feel
Mm.
happy that if this is the last AWOLNATION record, you have brought so many people together? The A1A,
Mm.
I've seen it on TV, as you will have done. You will have, you will have been asked permission. I've seen or heard the music on TV shows. It's been everywhere, and you've united people through
Mm.
pain. For me, it was, I go through certain degrees of bodily pain every day with my cerebral palsy. So when I listen to some of the music, and I have done through history, I find motivation in that. And I know other people that have done the same thing with their AWOLNATION stuff. If this is the last thing that you do, how do you feel about the fact that there is absolute evidence out in the world that you have united people all over the place through your sound? I'm not trying to blow smoke up your ass. I'm just saying that's how I experience it anyway.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing that and being vulnerable, in that question. If if I were to really allow myself to accept that, it could be a bit overwhelming, you know, and so, you know, it almost brings a tear to my eye, really, like to hear you speak like that, about these songs, because that's what music has done for me in a different way. Everybody has their, you know, um, battles, if you will, whether they're mental or physical, of course. And so that's what music's provided for me my whole life. And it sounds like music does the same thing for you. Um, so, you know, but it like, I don't have many people in my life who say anything like that, what you just shared. And maybe that's a good way to keep me grounded so I don't let it get to my head or something like this, you know, because, but yeah, I would be satisfied. I don't know how to take that, you know, like I've met people along the way that have said really you know, extreme stuff, like or tattoos, like, I mean, God forbid, for whatever reason, Kill Your Heroes is the song that I've seen the most of the lyrics. The Never Let Your Fear Decide Your Fate. I've met like hundreds of people with those lyrics, which has been fascinating. And you know, I'm like, wow, I'm permanently on your skin, you know, which is like, well, that's really wild stuff. And I remember when it first started happening, probably when I met you, I'm like, whoa, people are coming around and getting my signature tattooed. And that's, you know, and I should say that I've been very lucky that I'm not a celebrity. I'm not, no one recognizes me in the airport or restaurants, unless of course I'm like, you know, we're playing here, I'm talking to you from Houston, Texas. If I were to go to a restaurant right around the corner, maybe because people are having a drink before or whatever, but I feel like I've been given what I can handle. And I feel just right about this. But to kind of answer your question in a long-winded way, like I continue to do, I feel satisfied with this body of work, these 5 albums, and I feel like I put a lot into it, you know, and I'll never stop making music. Whether, you know, I have these fantasies about, like, you know, I made the Barbarians of California metal album. That's something check I wanted to do. I also want to make a mellow sort of acoustic record one day, and maybe that's under a different name, or maybe it's, you know, an AWOLNATION record. But I've given a lot to this thing, and I want to also protect my heart, you know, in the long run as well. And, you know, now that I'm a dad and, you know, but by the time they can ask me, wait, where are you going again? What are you doing? You're leaving us? You know, maybe I won't be able to handle that as good, you know, because right now they don't know. They don't really know that I'm gone. I mean, they feel it and stuff, but I can manage this better. But yeah, bringing people together, like you said, rather than taking that directly personal, like I'm responsible for that. I think just music does that. You know, and I, like, you know, for any of my songs to affect you in that way, it's just, that's as good as it gets. That's more important than any platinum, you know, or award or some shit like that, you know. So I'm humbled by your comment.
No, I just wanted to share it with you. And I think that it's interesting that you said there that you are happy with the body of work you've done. It's very rare that I speak to an artist that is happy, completely happy, or, well, maybe completely happy, but it sounds like you're very, very happy with it. You just said that, Aaron, and I think that's a beautiful thing that you can say. Obviously, we've got a record on the horizon, but like, you can say you're happy with it, and that's great, because not many people do that. Everyone's like, oh, this sucked, or I wish I'd done this differently, or whatever. And that's a cool thing, you know, that you can get to this point in your career and say that, you know. It's cool.
Yeah, and I think it may be circumstantial because there, you know, I haven't had to really make any compromises. I haven't had to be like, well, I wanted to sing that one part, but so and so said I shouldn't, and you know, and I should share with you. I mean, no one cares about this, and I used to not care about this either when I was younger. But I'm not with a record label. I'm just doing this on my own. So, you know, when we went to roll out the this album plan, it was really nice to not have to sort of debate or consider other opinions about which single to go with first, for example. So when me and my team, my management, you know, and my little bubble made a vote on what song to go with, I went with the most sincere song that I liked the most, which is Panoramic View.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily the big shiny, up tempo, like, poppy song necessarily, of today, but I mean, there's another ballad I know of that has done pretty well for me, So I was like, well, because Sail is a ballad. Let's face it, it's like a hardcore ballad or whatever, right? So I'm like, well, fuck it, let's just go with this song I like the most, and it's about my family, so let's try that. And now we just cracked the top 10 and on our own with no label help. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's beautiful, man, and that, you get the same. It's emotive, and that's the thing. The thing that for me, and this is where I have to be mindful not to dip too much into fandom in this context. But I think that you can always hear your emotion in the vocal. Your vocal, for me as a listener, you can hear that, and it's the same with Panoramic View, same with the ballads that you say. That emotion is there, and I think that's a beautiful thing. And I. I suppose it leads nicely on to do some album promo, because I think we probably should.
Yeah.
When you're releasing these tracks and you've got these collaborations, you're talking about the love of music. Do you feel, as you just said, do you feel that emotional love of music from when you were a kid? Again, when you're working with on these collaborations with these people that you admire. I know you've toured with Dead Sarah, of course. Funky Homo Sapien, incredible artist as well. Are you like excited, impassioned? Are you like a music fan as you're working on these collabs as well with these people?
Yeah, I'm a music fan when I think the music's good. Not just for the sake of working with these people, although,
right.
like the like the 18-year-old in me is freaking out that Del the Funky Homo Sapiens on the record, no doubt. And even same with the Barbarians of California. I have Daryl from Snapcase, who, when in high school, was like my favorite singer. Rick Rodney also is one of my favorite singers from Strife. So that project, and Tim McElrath from Rise Against is on that record. And so, like, anytime someone, or Rivers Cuomo on the last full length on Pacific Coast Highway in the movies, blew my mind. That he would be a part of it. And to get the approval of some of these people that, I won't go on and name drop, but some of the people that I looked up to so much growing up is more important than any award or great glowing review from a tastemaker necessarily. But really it's so that gets me excited and hyped, but it's more about if I like the song or not. Cause I've also gotten in the room with a few people that were great artists that didn't pan out, and so at this point, maybe I'm slightly, the excitement has chipped away a little bit, because I just want to make good music, so it's really about the song. And if there's a song I just know is good out of the gates, it's like being in the honeymoon phase of a new relationship where you can't do any wrong. You're excited to see this person, and the sex is going off and all this stuff, and you don't ever even want to take a break from each other. That's how a new song is. And if I have that feeling, that honeymoon feeling, then it's usually 9 times out of 10 a song that's going to make the record. And there are a lot of songs that don't make the record. I self-edit pretty well. Like I'm hard on myself, and my engineer Eric, he would tell you that there's 100 songs that haven't been released that were better than I think. And it's also about the songs that fit into this group or feeling of a full album, because I'm all over the place by nature anyways. So if you think some of these other songs are weird or like, outliers within an album, there's even weirder songs out there that I didn't release, So I have to be mindful of that too, because I love all music. I have a song that feels like a country song, and that just doesn't make sense for this project.
Yeah. Maybe we'll see the light, see the light of day in a future project, Aaron, which would be exciting, because I know that you were on about, doing other projects and stuff. I had 2 or 3 more questions before we finish.
Sure.
Again,
sure.
not saying that this is the last AWOLNATION record, but are you already thinking, as the musician's musician that I experience you to be, someone that's passionate about creating and sort of just wants to create good music, as you say, are you already thinking about project, you know, A, project B,
Yep.
2025, etc.? Is that
Yes.
something that's in your mindset now? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I'm like 3 years down the line on stuff, and I have I just it just hits me. I'm just such a lover of music and film, that I'm always kind of, you know, I'm pretty disciplined at checking out entertainment because it occurred to, well, and then I woke up one day and went, well, that's what I do. I guess I'm an entertainer, which is a crazy, you think of an entertainer as like Michael Jackson or Prince or Madonna or, stuff like that. But like, that's what this all is to entertain ourselves, and art entertains. So I'm always chasing down, you know, what I feel is next
Yeah.
artistically. Um, but I remember when I made the first album, this is just an example, a little anecdote. The first album, I was really bored of guitars. New metal had come, whether it was like, I don't need to shit on any of these bands, but like new metal had come and guitars were just really tired to me. And so when I made that first album, there are plenty of guitars, but I never used any power chords or too much distortion with the guitars. Rather, I would use bass synth for the power and the dirt. And then the second record, I was like, I think I'm ready for some more guitars again. And then, with Run, that riff comes in, and that was sort of like a flex of a big riff, but I made sure the drums were small sounding so the guitars could breathe. Then the third record, Here Come the Runs, it felt like it was time to make a more organic record. And I never seemed to be exactly, where the trends are currently. And now people say guitars are back, and I don't know if they are, if they aren't, but I never seem to align. Like there's an old saying that when all the, and I don't mean to brag if this comes across this way, but I just feel this in my heart when all society is running off the cliff and you're running the opposite direction, you're the one who looks crazy. And I've always felt that way musically, for better or for worse. And sometimes I nail it and sometimes I don't. But that's kind of just how I feel naturally, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. But I think people, again, you've built a community of people globally that, that really feel what you're doing, and maybe they'll run the opposite way. Well, people do run the opposite way with you. Clearly, there is.
I hope
A
so,
community.
because I'm trying to not go off the cliff,
Yeah,
so.
absolutely. And talking about that community, obviously, I know you touched on it in previous interviews you've given recently, the challenges of touring and the challenges of bringing something like, this record to the UK and to Europe. It's very, very challenging
Yeah.
times we exist in, as our government has changed, etc. As I know, it's the same, of course, in the US. But when you're thinking about bringing this stuff, 2000, obviously, as we finish 2024, 2025, what are the challenges of bringing this stuff back over to the UK? Is it possible? I think you hinted at the potential of next year for something.
Yeah.
Is that something that's on your radar, and are you excited to get back?
Yeah, of course. I mean, there's something so beautiful about going to different countries that have clearly artistically influenced me, either directly or indirectly, whether again it was through film or music, of course. So I do feel somewhat stunted right now that I haven't been able to go over, but there hasn't really been a reason to go, just for the sake of it over time. And with the lockdowns and madness, it felt like a nice time to just wait and create all this new music. So the silver lining and the positivity that I experienced through all the lockdowns, and concerts not going on, was that I was able to sort of hunker down and make a lot of music, which ended up being this album and the Barbarians of California and a few other projects I have up my sleeve as well. So now's the time. Maybe next year we plan on figuring out a way to get out there again. And
Well,
you know, I who knows, but I don't see I don't see us not going. Of course, unless the world decides to shut down again, you know, who
yeah,
knows?
yeah,
And they'll have to
yeah.
make another record. I don't know.
Yeah, well, fingers crossed that absolutely, and I think
Yeah.
just touching on what you just said there, again, what would be your message then to the people, as we've talked about, the people that you've touched, the people you've connected with, whether that's in the UK, across the world,
Mhm.
who've supported AWOLNATION, who will hopefully purchase and invest in the Phantom 5. What is your message to those people that have supported you through your career and will continue to do so?
Well, thank you first and foremost, and if I had one wish or one bit of advice or suggestion, it would be that by design, life is unfair, you know.
Mm.
And if you could find a way to ever, and this starts from my mom all the way until now, and I'm becoming better at this as time goes on. Maybe now that I have a different kind of responsibility as a parent, but if you could find a way to look at the glass half full, as I mentioned before, or find positivity in the most dire situation, it's almost a superpower.
Yeah.
And there's many books written on that. We don't have to get into any of that, but whether it's Man's Search for Meaning or much smarter people than myself have tapped into this concept, but you just have to find a way to carry on when stuff looks really bad. In a much more lighthearted way. That's what I did when my career was in shambles. And I found light at the end of the tunnel through that. And I just really encourage people to and it's an exercise. It could even be something you work on, slowly chip away when you're doing some shit you don't want to do, whether you're in a line at the airport, right? Something is simple as that, or at work, counting down the hours so you get off, or like, how do you find that light? How do you find that positivity, or make a joke of the horrible situation, or much worse atrocities, or real life stuff that's humbling, where you lose a loved one or you experience physical pain or whatever. If you can find a way, and by the way, I'm on the search to get better at this. If you're in a situation where it's almost unbearable, can you find a way through that? I'm working on it myself, and because that's the thing about life, is it's always going to throw you a curveball, just when you least expect it, right? And so my mom says joy is an option, and maybe some listeners would disagree with this, and I could see why, certainly, but doesn't hurt to try, right?
Yeah, joy is an option. Yeah, it's interesting. I have never.
It can be, I mean, and I don't know how to make some. There's been times in my life that we don't even need to get into, but I'm like, how could you say that, Mom? You don't know what I'm going through, or the pain I feel, or whatever. But that's her motto. That blows my mind. It's so simple.
Yeah, like it's always an option, no matter what. Is what I've taken from that. That's kind of what.
Well, and I know, and even I've studied history a bunch, and there have been times that are unspeakable, unthinkable atrocities that there were people that found, tiny glimpses of hope within the worst situations, and those are true heroes to me.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm going to take that, actually. So thank you. I'm going to look into that, as joy is an option for my own stuff. I just want to squeeze one more in, because I know you talked about even that you have sometimes where you struggle, I don't want to make any assumptions and say, oh, it's your kids, obviously, your recent father, things like that. What is it then, can be music, can be outside of music, obviously. What is it that keeps you going on those difficult days? Because again, people maybe listen to your music and see your success as we've talked about, and they might think, "Oh, you're doing just fine." But like you say, everybody has those days. You have those days. So what is it? Whether it's family or anything else that really keeps you motivated on those more difficult times, Aaron. If you feel comfortable enough to go into that.
Well, family certainly now. I could
Mm,
close my eyes at any point and picture my boys and
yeah.
in my world, and that's a newer found comfort that is only 18 months old,
Yeah.
18 months new, right?
Yeah.
But before that, it would be thoughts of my parents,
Mm,
without getting into it too much, my faith,
yeah.
and they're kind of one and the same, in a lot of ways because I was raised by my parents, and
Mm,
they've always been very supportive.
good. Yeah.
And I've actually been thinking about this lately. I feel like I owe my parents an apology for some of the anguish I put them through over the years,
Right.
but maybe I'll finally call and be like, hey guys, I'm really sorry I went through that phase, when I was 17, or this phase when I was in my mid 20s, and you guys were scared that I was falling
Yeah.
apart and all this stuff. And,
Yeah.
but that all to be said, yeah, family, faith, whatever faith you have, and it doesn't have to be one kind of religion or another, or anything like this. It's just something much bigger than yourself.
Yeah.
And even when you look at the animal kingdom, for example, it's pretty unfair, right? Like there's some things that happen, you're like, oh my gosh, you're watching the Animal Planet or whatever, and you're like, oh, this guy just got taken out by the other animal, and it's sad, and it's the cycle of life,
Yeah.
and you just have to navigate through it and not lose your mind.
Yeah.
And so, like before, I was way more negative. So to me, the whole world has become increasingly extremely negative now. So I guess the rebel in me, and it almost feels like it's punk rock to be kind of positive in a way, and
I like
I
that.
can't believe I'm saying some of the shit, but I think we have more in common with each other than we don't. And
Yeah.
I guess that's how I would leave that.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, it's punk rock to be positive. Sounds like, but it's
It's
cool.
crazy, right?
Like, it's an interesting point you make. Yeah, absolutely. And just quickly, because you just mentioned there, maybe calling your parents up. It's never too late, man. It's never too late. I had a conversation with my dad. Like, my dad's in his like late 70s, and he could never understand
Same.
why I went through the super goth phase, right? But
Yeah.
for me, as someone who had cerebral palsy, I spent my whole childhood just being stared at and like
Yep.
being ridiculed. So for me, it was like trying to give him something else to stare at, right? But my dad was like, "Why
Yep.
are you putting that makeup on?" But like I reasoned it out with him, like in more recent, like literally like maybe a year ago, we had the first conversation we'd ever had about it. And I was like, I was just doing what like Bowie was doing and Lou Reed was doing and Iggy Pop was doing, my dad grew up on like the Who and those types of,
Yeah.
those types of bands. And like when I reasoned it out and he understood because I explained it to him for the first, because he was like, I didn't understand it. It was weird. I didn't understand why you would, wear those clothes or do that because it was strange. But like for me, it was a body confidence thing. It was a, trying to figure out who I was. And I know it's a different experience, and I don't mean to diminish your own experience, Aaron, because obviously
No way.
I wasn't there. But what I'm saying is, I was afraid to have the conversation with my dad, but I did it, and like we have a better understanding of each other now and where each other
Yeah.
comes from. Obviously, I won't go into the full detail, but what I'm saying
Right.
is to you is it's never too late to have those conversations if you want
Yeah.
to. Yeah, you know what
Yeah.
I mean.
It makes perfect sense why you would want to dress that way,
Yeah,
or receive a different kind of attention that kind of like visually represented how you were feeling inside in a lot of ways. And that,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
what, and like as we look back at any phase we went through, it then allows us to, that's the benefit of getting older, is you can look back. And it's also the benefit of it gives you a different perspective of music as well. So I'm able to, like, we have these conversations on the bus all the time on tour where we talk about which bands have aged better than we thought they would.
Right.
You know, because when in your goth phase, you're thinking, fuck this band, fuck that band. I'm only listening to this or that, or like Morrissey's my main thing, or whatever it was, right? Or the Misfits, and not that those are goth bands, but you know what I'm saying. I'm sure you like both the Smiths, and so then, but then you look and you're not allowed to like certain music because it doesn't align with this or that, and then you get older and you're like, that one band was pretty fucking good. Every time, like, you know, like I hated Sublime because I was a straight edge kid, and this is a bad, not the greatest example, but when a Sublime song comes on now, I'm like, this is aged pretty good. This
really
is
good.
really cool.
Yeah.
Or when Stone Temple Pilots came out, I'm like, this is a Nirvana, Pearl Jam ripoff. I'm not down with this, but their songs are amazing when I hear them now, you know? And so that's a retrospective sort of, shall I say, panoramic view on music is a fun way to go.
Yeah, it's interesting. When I look back at like a band like 311, for example, obviously you're about to go on tour, you know, and you're doing the tours, and I think some of that stuff when I was younger, I was like, what is this? But then now I'm like, man, the musician, you know, it's so good, you know, like I said.
Well, the songs are good. Yeah, I felt the same way. I was like, wait, what is this? Like, I liked Rage and the Beastie Boys. I'm like, I don't get this, and like they just have great songs. You know, and they've aged really well. Like, and the list goes on and on and on. And and even a lot of one hit wonders from the 80s, you know, were considered hilarious, or like Rick Astley or whatever his name is. Those songs come on. I'm like, this song is amazing. And if you strip back the kind of cornball production and the music videos, although the videos kick ass when you watch them now, but you know, you strip it down, you just think of an acoustic guitar, you know, like an unplugged version of the song. They're great songs. And for us to, as we get older, we could drop our, you know, rules and regulations of what we see fit as cool or not. And then, you know, what's really cool is just a good song.
Yeah, absolutely, and it stands the test of time. As we talked about, you know, your music does that, and I'm aware that you have things to do and you know, shows to play. So I once again really appreciate the time, and I'm going to give the floor to you, Aaron, now, because I feel like we've done a bit of promo, but we've also had you know, a big chat. So is there anything that I have missed today that you would like to promote or plug as we finish up?
Oh, I think we covered so much just now, and it was wonderful talking to you. And you know, I guess I would use this last bit of time to say thank you for sharing some of your vulnerable emotions. You know, and
it's my pleasure. My pleasure.
Yeah, man. Kind of speechless about it. I really appreciate it. Even if we were just talking, this would have been cool to not be an interview, and I'm stoked.
And absolutely, thank you so much, and good luck with the shows. And obviously, we hope to see you. Speak for the UK fans. You know, hope to see you over here soon.
Yeah.